Welcome to a video on how to name angles. Okay, so we're going to figure out how to name some angles today. You can start off by saying Bob. You can call it Caden. You can call it Alyssa. You can call it Jonathan. You can call him Abby. You can call it Diamond. You can call it Destiny. You can name it all kinds of things. Just kidding. We're actually going to name it mathematically today. So first off, the symbol for an angle is like a little L sign, a small little cute angle. So first off, you can say angle 1. So if they give you a number in the angle, go ahead and call it angle 1. You probably won't see that way a lot though. Another way you can name it is angle A, and so you can use the vertex to name the angle. And then the two most common ways, which you're probably going to see the most, are with 3 letters, and the vertex has to be in the middle. So you can say BAC is an angle, and then you can also reverse those letters and do CAB. Fun thing about geometry is that you get to spell 3-letter words. So you got cats and cabs and dogs and all that as well. I will go ahead and tell you, if you ever have to say something that's UT, put Go Vols in a quiz or a test and you will get extra credit points because Go Vols will whoop. So those are the 4 ways that you can name an angle, these 2 being the most popular. So I want you to go ahead and try 1, 2, and 3 if you can. 3 has a lot of examples, but see if you can get them all correct. So press pause, and then you're going to try these on your own. Answers you should have gotten for 1, 2, and 3. So if you take a second to look over your answers, if you got them all right and you completely understand this, please do not listen to my explanation. If you need a little help, keep listening. So on number 1, I had 3 options because there was no number. So make sure the big thing is that you've got the vertex in the middle when you name it with 3 letters. Number 2, you had a number, so we could do the 4 generic ways like on the example problem. Just make sure that B is your vertex and that it's in the center letters. Now 3 was a little tricky because you had a lot of options because you had 2 adjacent angles. So I kind of color coded them for you. So the first one is in red, so I can name it angle 2, or I can name it JKM or MKJ, as long as K was in the middle. Then I also named this part of my angle, which there was no number, so there were only 2 ways to write it. So you could say MKL or LKM. Now, the tricky part is you cannot say angle K, because if you say angle K, I don't know which angle you're talking about. So if you have 2 adjacent angles that make up a large angle, to talk about the large angle, you can't just say angle K. So if you want to talk about this whole entire angle, you could say K or JKL or LKJ, which was in blue. So you could talk about the smaller angle in red, the smaller angle in green, or you can talk about the whole entire blue angle, okay? So let me know if you have any questions on how to name angles. Now we're going to bump down to example 2, where we're going to talk about adjacent versus vertical angles. So we've learned these vocabulary words previously. I know adjacent is side by side, they share a vertex and they share a side. Vertical angles are opposite and they only share a vertex but no sides in common. So 1 and 2, I'm going to mark angle 1 with this little angle mark. So there's angle 1, and then here was the angle 2. Okay, I can actually put 2 marks to denote angle 2. So angle 1 and angle 2, they are sharing this vertex right here, and they are sharing this side, so they are going to be adjacent. They're right beside each other. Okay. Let's bump to number 6. So 4 and 2. So here is angle 4. Here is angle 2. They share this vertex right here. But angle 4 would be made up of this angle. And then angle 2 would be made up of this angle. So they are not sharing a side at all. And so they're actually called vertical angles because they're opposite of each other. And they are equal to each other because they look equal. All right, now I've got to look at this second picture for my next 2 problems. So I've got angle AOE. So I'm going to start here at A, go to O, and then back down to E. So I'm talking about this bottom angle. And then I have COD, COD for my gamers out there. So there is angle COD. I noticed they're not sharing any sides. They have a common vertex, so those would be vertical angles. All right, lastly, I have angle AOB. Let's go green, AOB. Okay, it's a 90-degree angle because I've got that box right there. And then I have BOC. So B, O, and C would be that angle. So those are going to be touching. They share the side BO, and so those would be adjacent angles. Okay, so that's how you can tell from some words how to find an angle. I like to kind of draw them out and use colors, especially on a board. All right, so now you get to try. So example 3, you're going to name a pair of angles that fall into the category below. So a pair would mean 2. So you're going to name one vertical angle and the other one. So your problems are going to look like 5 and 7 up here. So with all of these angles going on, I want you to name an example of a vertical angle, adjacent angle, etc. Now, there are multiple answers, so I'm going to try and put as many as there are, but if my answer does not appear, please feel free to ask me. So press pause and try 8 through 12 on your own. Here are some examples I got. I starred 8 and 11 because these are the only 2 answers, but for the rest of them, there are a million bajillion possible choices. I'm going to try and go through them all. And if I don't go over yours, please raise your hand. So vertical angles have to be opposite and share a vertex. And so the most common mistake is people pick 1 and 2. But 1 and 2 are not directly opposite. They need to kind of make an X for vertical angles and be opposite like that. So that would be angle 1 and then this angle over here. So any way you want to name angle 1 would be correct, and then naming CGD or DGC. Okay, so that's number 8. Number 9, adjacent angles. There are a million answers because they're all touching. So if you wanted to say this angle right here and this angle, be great. You could say this angle and this angle. You could say this angle and this angle, this angle and this angle. So basically every single thing is touching. So then you've got linear pair, and the difference between linear pair and supplementary, we know linear pairs have to be touching or sharing a side. So my example of a linear pair, I had FGA, so I had this angle, and then I had AGC. So then I had this one. So notice my final answer made a line, so a linear pair. You could have also had, you could have said CGB and then BGF, because that would have made a linear pair. You could have said FGE and then CGE, because those would have come together to make a linear pair. So if I didn't say that, I'm sure there's much more answers to pick from. Complementary angles, there was only one, and they have to be equal to 90, and so you can't name this angle here, FGE, because that's already 90. We know complementary deals with 2 angles that equal 90. So if this box right here is 90, then I know this box over here would be 90 as well. So then these are my 2 complementary angles, C, G, and D, and then E, G, and D, in any way you want to name those 2. Lastly, supplementary angles. You could have had all of your answers from number 10, or they don't have to be touching or sharing a side. So, for example, you could have done AGC, this angle, and then you could have done CGD. So then you've got your linear pair going this way. So it's kind of a one turned on its side. Okay, so again, there are tons and tons of answers to these problems. So if you want to make sure you're 100% right, raise your hand and I'll come check or ask a buddy. But that is how you name some angles. Okay, so go ahead and practice, and thanks for watching. Just kidding, I forgot to end my video with a cool math joke. So why was the angle freezing? Because it was less than 32 degrees. Ha 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 ha.